Howdy, y'all, and welcome to the EEARSS Podcast, produced by Terrier TV. I am Frank Robb, sometimes known as Alligator Robb. That is Cindy, that is Bill, and that is Matt Yount. Matt, what's up?
Nothing much, Frank. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you here, buddy. So, guys, what's been happening in the awesome world of Titusville since the last time we got together?
Since the last time that we got together, well, let's see.
It's been a minute ago.
Yeah, it was a minute ago.
I mean, when I say, some kids go, it's been a minute. Well, it's probably been a minute. Yeah, it's probably been a minute.
Literally,
Yeah.
it has been a minute.
A little bit over that, but yeah.
Yikes.
No, things are just ducky.
Yeah. So we never really got a chance to talk about the Titusville Terrier football team being in the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
We touched it for a second, then we jumped off the topic.
Yep.
Am I right in saying it's been more than 30 years?
It's been a long time. I mean, the last
Since a home playoff game. Since a
home playoff.
Yeah, it's been like 35
home
years or something
playoff,
ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, home playoffs.
Like
been a long
84,
time.
I understand, if I remember right.
Could be.
Yeah. I was
Somewhere.
asking somebody to give me an exact date, but nobody actually could. But I
I
think
don't
it's
know.
84,
Could be.
which I think were we state champions then?
Yeah, I think 83, 84. Yeah.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
would have been probably the last time we had a home playoff game, which is crazy to think
Could be.
about.
I
that.
don't know. There was a while there that we were okay for, like, the next couple of years till Al left. When Al Warnicki left and went up to North Florida and coached a couple of state championships up there.
Wow.
And then he came back.
Wow. Yeah, times have changed. It's pretty cool to see the team that Coach Holmes has put together, and it's I don't know. It's neat to be able to just go there and watch that. But I was telling you before we started this that announcing the game for a playoff game is totally different than announcing a game for a normal home game.
Well, by different, he means that there's a bunch of rules.
There's a bunch of rules.
There is nobody standing there to enforce these rules. If you don't say
Just
these
putting
things,
that out there.
because trust me, I've been in basketball playoff games where we host the basketball playoff games, and they have this script of stuff they want you to say. Let me tell you, buddy, I went through and crossed stuff off. I'm not saying that.
You've never heard this
Not saying that.
conversation ever before, people.
No. If you work for the FHSAA, come on, baby, let's go.
Who do you play first?
Titusville plays Palm Bay.
Yeah, we play Palm
Friday.
Bay.
Wow.
Yeah.
We play Palm Bay, and if
Local
we
flavor.
win Palm Bay, beat Palm Bay, then we have to travel the next week to Sumter County.
Sumter.
So-
Remind me, Sumter's south of Orlando?
I think it's
West Orlando.
south of Ocala.
Okay, so north Orlando.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's up in there somewhere.
Any idea what team that is? Or it'd just be a team
I
over
do.
there?
It's Bushnell.
Okay.
Traditionally good, yeah.
Are they?
Mhm.
You've heard of Bushnell?
I have.
I mean, I've heard of Bushnell, like things that Bushnell makes. I never knew that was. I guess I knew it was an area.
There you go. Okay.
As the kids say, elephant rhino.
Yep, they all say that.
They
the
say
kids,
it
they're
all
all
the time.
saying
They
it.
all
Yep.
say that.
Yep.
Yeah.
They even say it and don't even understand
I
what
have
it
to
means.
tell them to stop saying it.
Yeah.
Do
Stop
you really?
saying that, kids. Yeah.
Have you ever seen an elephant and a rhino beside each other? It's not funny. Serious stuff. Okay. Yeah. So let's jump into this conversation. You guys say this is good?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that. Yeah. Before we get stuck on weird animals mixed together and things of that nature. Matt, thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
How's your year been going, buddy? Tell us. Man, it's been last season since we had you on.
Now, not everybody has access to these wonderful graphics. They may not know that he is the former Brevard County Teacher of the Year. So we need to make sure that that's out on the table. That's out
He
there.
is the man when it comes to Brevard County Public School System. You are the guy.
Oh,
Let's just go ahead and put it out there and make it true. How long have you been teaching now?
This is my 22nd year.
22nd year teaching, and you're currently at
Imperial Estates Elementary right here in Titusville.
All right. What are you teaching over there?
This is my first year doing all of 5th grade. I do science and social studies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has it been fun doing that? Has it been a fun transition? What have you enjoyed about the transition or what do you maybe miss?
I think my favorite thing about the transition is I get to teach all of 5th grade. So all 96 students are my students. So that's kind of cool to get to know all the different kids, all the different families, and then really dive into 2 subjects I really enjoy teaching. The challenge or kind of the give and take with that would be that I only get them for like an hour of instructional time plus, maybe a recess or a lunch or an activity. But So I don't get to go as like deep in my relationship, but the fact that I do get to teach all of 5th grade is pretty exciting.
So in a perfect world, to be a mix somewhere in between.
Yeah, but at the same time, this, I have a great team of teachers with me. And so, one lady is amazing at teaching math, and other 2 amazing ladies that are teaching ELA. And we're making a really good team. And we're trying to help these kids just move the needle as best they can and kind of recover from a lot of damage and learning gaps that occurred during COVID.
Yeah.
That happened across the board, but I think especially impacted some of the lower socioeconomic communities more than others.
Okay, makes sense. What are this school year? I hear so many different things going on about the 2023 school year. You hear parents talking about it. You hear teachers talking about it. You see on the news. You see all these things that are going on. What in the world is happening in the year of 2023 in the public school system?
Yeah. Well, I would say it's the school system in general, but because we have just a mass exodus of teachers. I think that's one of the number one factors to where you're going to see a lot of these other dominoes fall. And the argument could be, chicken or egg argument, like what occurred first. But like when you don't have the quality of people in front of our students and you're having to have a recurring substitute, or you're having to have larger class sizes, or you're having teachers leave mid-year. I mean, that leaves like educational scars on our kids that for years to come. And then it puts more impact and more weight across the shoulders of the amazing people we do have that are accepting the call to teach and are trying to do the best they can for their students. But we have just a crazy teacher shortage. I mean, we have, teachers leaving every single week. We have teachers across the state, thousands of vacancies across the nation. I mean, it's a local problem, but it's a state problem. It's a national problem. And I feel like because there's bigger items that people get on their news feed, we're not talking about it nearly enough, but it's a crisis.
So what do we do to make it more inviting for teachers to want to come in, and why? What are some of the reasons you think everybody's leaving?
Well, I first want to say, since I was last on the show, one of the stopgaps that I'm really pleased that our county decided to vote for and really show support for was that millage increase. That was crucial. Not only for my wife's a teacher as well, so we're a 2-teacher family. That helped us continue to pay our bills and raise our family and not have to have, 3rd and 4th jobs. Sometimes we do work our 2nd jobs, but the idea is like, that was huge, but that was a stopgap. That was not a solution. And that was, again, just locally. But back to your original question. So I just wanted to thank the community for coming out and like voting and supporting teachers in that way to help us with that wage compression and to help us with that, basically it was a recruitment issue. It was a retention issue. So that at least helps. But really what I'm finding more as I talk with more and more teachers, because I'm very active with the Brevard Federation of Teachers as well. And as I talk with more and more teachers, it's less about the finances and it's more about the quality of life. And it's more about feeling supported and appreciated. And I find that that's true across the board, whether you're talking about a pre-K teacher or a 12th grade senior English teacher. I feel like every teacher just wants a quality of life improvement when it comes to their day at work, and they want to feel supported, whether it's discipline, whether it's family involvement, whether it's, the students taking ownership of their own learning. But there's a lot of factors at play. Unfortunately, a lot of them are political. And I feel like education should be the great unifier. Like, I have no idea why education has been politicized. It should be the one issue that I don't care where you lean, we should all support educating our future. And I don't understand how it's become, so red or so blue or so, polarizing.
So that's you bring up a great thing there. How in the world do we battle this? What are some of the, let's say you're sitting somewhere and you have some choices to make. You got a sheet of paper, they got a bunch of things to check off, the things you can do, things that can make a difference. Where are you starting?
Yeah, I mean, first thing I'm doing is I'm starting with taking care of the teachers. And I know everybody's like, well, because, there's this like mantra when you get on an airplane, right? You got to put on your own mask before you can help others. And obviously, if you put the right people in any business, I believe this is true in any business. People are your greatest resource. And if you take care of your people, all the other metrics will follow. Your sales, if you're, if you're into sales, will go up. Your level of service, if you're a service-oriented company, will go up. So I've never been an outcome-based teacher. The outcomes always come, but it's about relationship, whether that's in my classroom, whether that's principals treating their staff with respect, whether that's districts treating their principals with respect. It just goes on and on down the line. So I would ultimately start with, we need to elevate the teaching profession. It doesn't, like, some people have almost gone out of their way to diminish what we do. We're not babysitters. We are educators. And some people are teachers because they have degrees, but other people are educators in other ways. We have amazing paraprofessionals that work with students with disabilities and students with special needs. They're educators. I mean, we have a bus driver shortage. They're educating these kids on safety and how and kindness sometimes and how to treat each other. We have amazing cafeteria workers. We have awesome custodial staff. I mean, you go on and on down the list, and all of this, the rising tide raises all ships, right? I feel like if we elevate education, A, by talking about it more, B, funding it appropriately, and C, bringing it up to that level of respect that I believe it did used to carry, I think that would be a great step one. And I don't think that costs a whole lot to just respect, and show that respect.
And where do you see the biggest loss in the respect you're talking about? Is it from the students you're teaching? Is it like a parent thing? I mean, is it something that, I'm asking you, what can we as non-teachers do to help make a difference with the product that's there that you guys are teaching? Yeah,
I think the number one thing is to see your teacher and the teacher of your students as a member of your students' team. Like, I think somewhere along the line, and obviously I'm painting with a wide brush. There's, so at this, if this doesn't apply, then don't take this personally. But sometimes parents believe like that's your job as the teacher to do X, Y, or Z. And so then there's this, like, we almost become like co-parents where it just becomes awkward because they might behave in my class, but then they don't at home, or they are great for you, but then they act out when they're with me. And instead of that model, I would like to see, and I see that, and that's what's so cool. I do see it, and it works, is when parents and teachers and administrators are all on team, fill in the blank kid's name here. If we're talking about you, me as your teacher, along with your, teacher's aide, along with your ESE teacher, along with your parents or grandparents or whoever's raising you, we're all on Team Frank. And once we take that mentality, it stops becoming adversarial. It stops becoming, like, well, you're getting my kid in trouble or whatever. We can now hold the child accountable for their behavior because that we all care for the outcome of that child. Does that make sense? It does. I don't get to be your child's teacher when they go home. Parents need to pick up the mantle that they are their child's first and most important teacher. I am the supplement to what's going on at your house. I am a subject area expert that gets the privilege of working with your kid for 1 year in this curriculum or in this subject area. But ultimately, the ownership, I would like to see parental ownership increase of, this is my child forever. I'm entrusting them to Mr. Yount for X hours a day, but they're still my child. And I want to make sure that Mr. Yount's doing his job, my student is doing their job, and I am doing my job. Everyone holding everyone accountable instead of a finger-pointing blame thing that I sometimes see play out.
Why are we not having these conversations with the parents and the community for each school multiple times a year, and having everybody come together and having that exact conversation so everybody can be on the same page? It's like I look at it like coaching. You make sure all your players on the same page so that each play goes through smoothly. If everybody's not on the same page and doesn't understand the playbook and where you're trying to go with it, obviously they're going to be all over the place. So why is this not being like reinforced all the time?
Well, and I think it is, like in really good schools and in really good classrooms and really good teams, it is. Whether it's being implemented across the board, obviously different parents have different viewpoints of the amount of time, energy, money, etc., resources that they want to invest in that particular arena. And so some it's they just don't have any bandwidth left.
Yep.
I work 2 and 3 jobs. I send them to school. I expect them to be safe. You to teach them. I don't got anything left when they come home.
Of a bigger struggling community-wide
Yes.
problem. We've got families that don't have the resources they need to be successful outside of school.
Yeah.
They are living in domestic violence households because the shelters are full, or they've had the strength to leave that situation, but now there's no funding, there's no resources available to help them. So these single parents are working 3 and 4 jobs. They don't have anything left to give to their kids. And then the teachers get the brunt of that.
Yeah. And like, so that's why I just want to make it clear. There's like no judgment in any of my statements. It's one of those where sometimes it is absolutely circumstantial.
Yeah.
Other times it's attitudinal. Yeah. That's, hey, this is your job. This is my job. And they just have it clearly defined that there's no overlap. And so those are a little more difficult because that's almost like a philosophical debate you have to get into.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then other times it is, as soon as you kind of introduce this concept, as soon as you kind of break down whatever wall they may have built up, because I teach mostly 5th and 6th grade. So, I compare it to like people's spiritual relationships with their churches sometimes. Sometimes you're not mad at God. You're just mad at the last church that represented God to you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so sometimes they're not mad at me. They don't really know me sometimes. They're mad at the last negative educational experience they may have had. And so sometimes it takes months before and this could be a student thing, a parent thing, anything, where they finally trust that I have your kid's best interest at heart, and I'm just using my years of experience to leverage the best possible experience for your child. But they need to take an active role in that. I can't force them to learn. And you need to take an active supporting role in that because you're their parent for 16 hours out of the day. You're the parent 24, but they're with you. So,
I would say I imagine a lot of times that's a very delicate and tough conversation to have.
It's very difficult. And then especially when you live in this day and age of, I believe it's a day and age of hypersensitivity and, people, and I've even said this to my students, I'm like, we don't need any more uneducated opinions. We have plenty of those. We have plenty of those. If you don't believe me, check the chat section in probably on this podcast. There's plenty of uneducated opinions out there. That is not a shortage.
Just read the comments below.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So I encourage everybody, just have either listen more or have an educated opinion and maybe speak life into a situation or speak positive change into a situation instead of just being more noise.
How are you having those conversations now versus when you first started teaching? How have you watched that evolve for yourself? I mean, I'm sure you've got much better and much more maybe delicate, maybe more straightforward, maybe.
I am pretty straightforward, probably to my own detriment. But that is kind of, that's both my charm and the reason people don't like me is like, I am not a sugarcoat guy. I want to show you the reality, and then I'm going to walk alongside you to help you face that reality. And I'm like that in my personal life. I'm like that in my spiritual life. I'm like that with my family. I'm like that with my students. And so most people come around and they enjoy that because they eventually know that like it's truth in love. It's not just me being a jerk and saying, well, I got to be honest. You know how people like use that as like an excuse to just say horrible, hurtful things. It's like, no. I'm trying to actually build you up, but we can't build on this shaky foundation. Yeah. So I need to explain the cracks here so we can fill it in. And I find that that's helpful. That's probably why I'll never teach any grade younger than 5th grade. 5th grade is my favorite. 6th grade's a close second because they start to conceptualize themselves as an individual, and I can start to layer independent skills of you're not a baby anymore. Like I need you to start acting like you're in control of these aspects of your life. And I always tell, I have a saying in my room and I wear a bracelet that you can control your own fate, which is focus, attitude, time, and effort. Because there's so many other things outside of their control, outside of our control. I can't control the family I was born into. I can't control my race or ethnicity. I can't control, especially as a child, my socioeconomic background. Can't control my zip code, but I can control what I focus on. I can control my attitude that I bring to whatever situation. The great equalizer is time. The richest people have 24 hours. The poorest people have 24 hours. What are you doing with yours? And then effort. Like, there's no reason not to give max effort. Like, none. Like, maybe your max effort's different than mine because you're exhausted from the night, but I just need to see what you can put out into a product. So those are kind of some of the things that I've just said for, decades, to just try to empower my students that, like, your parents and me, we want you to not live the mistakes we made. That's like one of our goals as parents and adults is we would love if you had a better experience than us. And that's why we try so much to share our like sage wisdom on something and be like, please don't do this because it cost me years, or it cost me this opportunity, or it cost me, these hurt feelings that I carried for too long. So that's just part of I teach science and social studies, but like I'm trying to pour in, and I know a lot of teachers do too. We're trying to pour in like life lessons as well.
That's important. And I got to be honest, Matt, since we're just no, you've always been I've watched you teach. I've watched you interact with students. I've seen students years later come back to you and have these conversations with you about the impact you've made in their lives long before you were with Brevard County Public School System. And man, you do a great job, and you're amazing what you do. You're a great father. I've watched the way you interact with your kids. It's just, I don't know. You have a lot there to be very proud of, and you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. But and if I can get a plug in for
Please.
teaching.
Oh yeah, we're not done yet.
While there's a lot of things that are hard,
like
it's the most rewarding career. Like I can't think of any other, what we give up in maybe financial and incentives and rewards. When I get a student that comes back and even says anything positive, I get all like emotional about it. Just thinking, if I was able to play one small part in course correction or in just building them to the person that they are, like, that's so cool. And if you have this long career like Mr. Curtis or myself, where we can say that about hundreds of students, maybe even thousands, don't want to age you, but
No. That's,
And that, like, there's nothing I can compare to it, right? Like, it's just, that's really cool. And I've had unique experiences that I'm just humbled and blessed where, I've watched my students graduate college. I've watched students, I've literally gone and been at their military boot camp graduation. I've seen them holding their babies for the first time. I've been at their weddings, like just those things where I'm like, wow, I'm really old, number one. But number two, it is cool to see that impact. And then to know that those are just the things I've seen. Like, I don't know what else. You know what I mean? Like,
now,
this ripple.
Have you experienced the cycle where you get the children of your former students?
I had that last year for my very first time. Is a young lady that my internship teaching experience. I got to teach her son last year. So that was my first child of a child or student of a student experience.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. All right, let's talk about 2023, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the 2023 school system, I'm trying to think of major changes this year. Cell phones were a major change this year.
Yes and no.
I was say,
Yes.
tell me about that.
So the policy existed already.
It did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it always did. Yeah.
It was
just never enforced.
Enforcement had gotten, we'll say, inconsistent. Right?
There we go. That's a
But
kind
it's a
word.
good way.
Right,
Kind
because obviously, fun fact about me is I don't even own a cell phone. I hate them with
It's true.
I
He's
hate
never
them
had
with
one
a
yet.
burning passion that like no one should hate inanimate objects as much as I hate them. But I believe they're the single worst invention in the history of inventions. And that'd be a whole nother episode.
Yeah,
so I
well,
won't
that's
bore
what.
you with that
That's the reason I
soapbox.
kept looking at the clock to see what time it was.
Yeah.
Because I knew at some point he was going to be out there and have no way to tell us he was out there.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a whole different thing. But
well,
yes,
he
please.
should.
Yeah.
You have a gate key, don't you?
I did. It does not work here.
Oh, I thought it worked everywhere.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Secret knowledge.
Good to know.
Yeah, no, mine only works.
So by all means, continue the cell phone conversation. Sorry.
So it was one of those. So in my class, that's a definite no. I don't even want to see it. You know, so that was never an issue for me as a teacher. Now in other classes, and kudos to those teachers. They would leverage the children and students' desire to use that technology for good. And they'd use it to help them with research or to capture video clips or whatever.
Or we bargain for
appropriate.
some time.
Yeah, sure.
If you will do this.
Right, yeah, maybe a bargaining chip. But so there were expert ways to either use it or not use it, and that always existed. So this was more like, I think it had just gotten out of hand in maybe a majority of areas or even just a growing number of classrooms, and so it was kind of readdressed, but the policy was always there.
Right, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, see, I thought that they were always allowed or something along that nature, and then all of a sudden there was like a burn them all to the ground kind of thing.
Well, I always thought at one point, okay, I had this theory that, because when I started, the big thing was pagers.
Nice.
When you had a pager, and kids had them, and usually most of the kids had some sort of business on the side, and so that was that kind of.
That took me
Cindy gets
just
it
a
second
second.
later.
Yeah.
That was that relationship that the two had, and I always felt that was kind of carried over to when the cell phones came. When cell phones came, again, that means you're involved in some shady business, and then it's just everybody has it, and so I don't think we kind of evolved to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think, as you say, as a society, I don't think we've learned to put it in its place.
That's a very well put. It has become, it's actually one of the growing, I believe it's the number one new fear, is called nomophobia. It's a real thing where it's actually surpassed public speaking. It's actually surpassed heights in this generation where their fear is to not have their mobile device.
Yeah. Well, I've had discussion.
fear.
I had a discussion with a student just the other day because he's like very involved in his phone. And I said, dude, have you ever thought about just taking some time, take a couple hours, put it away, put it where you can't get to it and go do something else and just see what opens up. See if it changes the way you see things. And he thought about it and thought, well, yeah, maybe I might do it. I don't think he has yet, but
Right. Well, it's an addiction as well.
Oh, it is. It is.
It feeds those serotonin and the dopamine centers much like a drug does. So if parents are wondering at home, like why their kids get so angry when you take that from them, it's an actual chemical reaction, just like taking drugs from an addict. And it should scare us again way more than we're talking about.
I cannot imagine
Yeah.
that a student would be upset for the parent taking away a cell phone. I can't imagine that would ever happen, that any student would be upset by having their phone taken away. I'm looking at my student
the
director.
teenager that we can see
That-
in the
yes.
control room.
Yes, he
Well,
has.
That's hilarious.
But to tie it back in,
You can
Frank,
turn the mic on. You can turn the mic
It
on.
was only a couple times.
Okay, yeah.
But to tie it back into your original question is like education used to be like education. And now educators, whether perceived or real, feel the need, and sometimes it is real, to now compete with entertainment. So it becomes this almost like this weird hybrid of like edutainment, right? And so the idea is it's like, I'm a pretty entertaining dude. I'm pretty animated. I can do voices and have fun in my class and whatever, but I can't compete with the hours and hours that are being logged onto, whether it's social media, whether it's television, whether it's, scrolling through whatever they scroll through, whatever the apps and all that stuff. It's one of those where that's become a really big struggle in education as well, as it's no longer just like, oh, cool, you're kind of a highlight of my day because otherwise I'd be sitting around doing very little. Now it's, oh, you're interrupting me from doing my whatever it is, that I would want to be doing. So it better be good and it better be entertaining. It's almost like created this weird consumer attitude for our students instead of, and I always talk this over with my students, like there are other countries that they are like literally walking miles barefoot to just get to a one-room schoolhouse for the opportunity to hear from a teacher that doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, and yet here it's like we're boring you, or here it's like we're wasting your time. And it's like, it's just such a myopic viewpoint that it saddens me that that's become more the norm.
I wonder if you have to have that conversation with your kids occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had to have that conversation with them?
100%. Yes.
And how do they take it?
I mean, same thing. Most people just write me off as like, oh, that's old school, And I'm like, but if you look at the metrics, like we're not happier.
That's true.
Depression is at an all-time high. So if your way worked, I would shut up, but it doesn't. So I'm not going to shut up. You know what I mean? Like it's not achieving the outcomes we wanted to achieve. We're not more productive. All the productivity studies say we're less productive. Yet we have a supercomputer in our hand that in theory has the knowledge of the world, and yet we're less productive. That's weird.
Yeah.
We're less happy, yet we have something that in theory can give us dopamine release whenever we want, but we're not happy. Depression, we won't get into, teen, socio-emotional stuff going on. I mean, it's crazy. Like, and so it's one of those where I'm like, our communication skills are lacking. Like us being able to talk like this, whether there were microphones here, we could talk like this at a lunch table. And we did in this very school.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now you'll literally see, and it made me sad one time because I actually was at my little brother's birthday party, and he had all his best friends at the party. And there was one scene I remember capturing it in my mind where I just looked into this crowd of 12 different, teenagers, and they were sitting there, and no one was talking to anyone verbally. They were just interacting with their phone. And I'm like, you have your favorite people in the same room, and this is still the activity, the preferred choice. Like, that was just like jarring to me, but that is how they communicate, yet it's less effective. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting to me, so it's kind of a subtext on education is where we're seeding our time, where we're seeding our attention. And then we wonder why we're not achieving the outcomes we used to achieve as a state, as a family, as a nation,
Yeah, that's fair. I know Cindy has a question for you too.
Mm-hmm.
She was talking about books earlier.
I was tasked with bringing up the hot topic of banned books.
Right. Yeah. So again, that is a huge issue.
What is that, Matt? Explain to me what that is.
We have legislation that has passed that there are certain books and certain authors and certain topics that are no longer allowed to be offered in, media centers and in curriculum. And what I believe was a well-intentioned protective measure has sadly become an overly politicized, kind of try to like way too big a blanket kind of thing. And now it's creating
abused and misused.
Absolutely. Yes. Well put. And it's like, it's crazy to me. Like we should want, like at the same time we're banning a book, we're still giving kids unfettered internet access, which doesn't make sense. Right? Like that's weird. But then like we're banning books that are talking about things that like, quite honestly, we should be having. Now, I'm not saying all things are appropriate for all ages.
Right.
That would be an ignorant statement, right? Like everything needs to be, and maybe it's not introduced by an educator, but to then say you can't read a book about blank because X number of people have been offended about blank. Mm-hmm. Well, how are we ever going to get over those things that offend us? Like being offended to me is a choice. Like I get to choose what offends me and whether I stay offended or not. And to me, if something is offensive, maybe we need to get to the root cause of why that's offensive and why that is either belongs in society, doesn't belong in society, or like have these healing conversations instead of just shoving them books, issues, and whatever, shoving it into like the proverbial closet and basically saying, let's never talk about these things again. It's like that doesn't help heal.
It's so hard for me to even wrap my brain around the concept because for me, my entire life, I have been a researcher. I have always been fascinated by reading things that I don't agree with things that blow my mind, things that are so far from what I understand or know that I can't imagine being threatened by the thought of your child reading something different.
Well,
I don't get it.
If you've ever read the book or seen the film adaptations, like it's like we're really close to like a Fahrenheit 451 situation. And again, I think because people are enamored with bigger, in their mind, bigger, more important issues, which I get it. There's a lot to be concerned about. If you just want to be concerned about everything going on in the world, it would be exhausting. But at the same time, it's like there's nothing that affects us here in our communities more than education. A war overseas is important, and I get it, and it's valuable to have education about it, but most of us cannot do anything about that circumstance. But yet we can do, like, I'm a big guy on like, let's be purposeful on what we can do about situations instead of being wasteful with our mental stress and power over things that we have no control over. So I just think like education should be.
How do we change the focus? What are the, we talked a little bit about it, but what are the, let's say you have the keys to the kingdom of the state of Florida. What are the changes you make to?
Well, the first thing I would like to see as Joe taxpayer or Jill taxpayer, I would like to see people hold our elected officials of all parties accountable to their positions on education. It used to be a core, like positional, like we cared. And now when I even get those voter guides, it's not even on the voter guides sheet anymore. Like, what do they believe about education?
Yeah.
Now we're worried, and I'm not saying these other issues aren't important. Please don't hear that. But it's like, we're worried about, their stance on gun control, their stance on immigration, their stance on taxes, their stance on et cetera, et cetera. When did education stop becoming a top issue? It's barely mentioned in debates on a national scale. It's almost never talked about in news media other than the occasional school shooting, which is sad. But it doesn't, like you notice, it just reports on the shooting itself. It rarely goes deep into what these kids are dealing with, what these teachers are dealing with. So to me, we need to hold our media a little more responsible on actually doing in-depth coverage of what's really going on in our schools. Not just topical stuff at a controversial school board meeting, not just controversial, crazy issues just to get more clicks. Like, let's get deep on stuff. So I would want to see the average voter hold their people that they vote for. And I don't care which way you vote, because like I said at the beginning, everybody should care about education. And so, like, let's hold them accountable. What are your positions on vouchers? Do they line up with what I believe in? What is your position on banned books? Do they line up? Why do we have lawmakers who have had very little, like, we have almost no classroom teacher lawmakers, which I think is a really sad statement. Because when you ever look at demographics, they'll say teacher, but they're an adjunct college professor, which, with all respect, is not the same as a K-12 educator. It's not the same at all. It's apples and oranges. So we need more people to run for office that know the issues of education. And number two, we need voters to actually ask the question, where are you at? And hold them accountable to those answers, to those policies. And that's something we can all do as voters.
That's okay. So you brought up the topic vouchers.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that for a second. But I also want to put in your mind, you're saying there's a mass exodus of teachers,
yes,
right? And there's all these things that are struggling with the education system.
Mm.
How do we stop the exodus? How do we bring more teachers back in, and how do we get them to stay?
Well, I just want to bring up an interesting thing that I don't think the average listener would even know is occurring.
Okay.
And I think it's both sad and heartwarming at the same time. And let me explain, my position. We are now, as one of the theoretically richest nations in the world, we are now actually getting teachers from other countries to come over here on limited term contracts to teach our students because we don't have enough American teachers that want to do it. So that's very sad, but also uplifting because I work with several of these ladies, and I'm sure there's some gentlemen as well, but like, they're amazing teachers, they're amazing educators. I'm so thankful for their help. But what a sad statement in general, that's where we're at as a country. That's where we're at as a state, that we're having to subcontract out the education of our own children to other smaller countries. Like, that doesn't make any sense on any level. So I just wanted that out there. That's kind of an interesting thing that I don't think most people know about.
That's interesting.
And again, I'm thankful for those people, but I also wish we didn't have to use that, right? But I think obviously any kind of, and this is going to sound like a money grab, but I hope you understand what I mean. I have a master's degree. Like, I make less than like I did when I waited tables at a steak restaurant. That's a problem. like I have 22 years experience. I've been doing this my whole life and I won't do anything else. Like, I love my job. But some people, some of the greatest educators I've known, even this year, have said, I've loved the blank amount of years I've taught, but I can't do it anymore because I'm leaving too much money on the table. And in their mind, that money is security for their family. So I can never argue with them. I'm sad that my kids won't get to see that. You know, my kids, whether it's my physical children or my students, I call them my kids either way, will miss out on that teacher. But so I would love to see a world or a state or a county where we make what we could make working anywhere else. I don't need to make more. I just want to make about the same. And like, I feel like it should be valued that high. And no disrespect to the amazing engineers and people that work out at NASA, but like, we're the ones that create those engineers. We're the ones that create the people that are going to get on that space, you know, and go to Mars. Like, so it's weird that somebody can do a job that requires the same or even less education than we have, and sometimes make 2 to 3 times what we make. So until that's not a problem, it will always be a problem.
Gotcha.
That wage issue. So that's one, because how am I going to tell? And then I'm a firm believer, and if anyone that has this kind of power is listening, I think it's a great idea, is I don't know why we're not doing more tuition reimbursement stuff. Like, to me, if you're willing to commit to X amount of years teaching in a public school, you should get a free degree. Because who in their right mind, and I'm a teacher, my wife's a teacher, and one of my daughters wants to be a teacher, but who in their right mind is going to be like, yeah, go $100,000 in debt to get into a career field that will literally take you 20 years to pay that debt off? Like, on some level, that's why we don't get a lot of math teachers, because they do the math and they go, that doesn't make sense.
That doesn't add up.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a problem. So I think we should be partnering with our local community colleges and I would love to see.
That's ingenious.
I'd love to see Eastern Florida maybe take the lead on that, because, you know, they've had really good teacher prep electives in their 2-year degree, and they do have a bachelor's track for certain levels of education. I'd love to see them expand that program. I'd love to see state, you know, representatives fund that. You know, maybe they waive fees for the college so that the college can do that. I mean, there's ways to do that. There's forgiveness programs out there. There's ways to do that. And then so that, you know, is just the financial side. But you know, this is my opinion. I'm not representing the opinions of anyone else when I say what I'm about to say. We have to get back to holding students to the standard of behavior. And if they don't meet that standard, there needs to be consistent and very clear repercussions for those decisions. Because this sliding scale of sometimes you get this, other times you get this, sometimes nothing happens, it's created this like mess in a lot of teachers' classrooms where teachers don't feel like they have a voice, because I'm telling you this student is disrupting my learning environment for X number of other students, and yet nothing is being done. And that it makes them feel powerless. It makes them feel like they're not being heard. It makes them feel not supported. So I want to see continued development. Like, we started this, and I want them to continue it. I would love to see us go back to a more consistent discipline plan. And what I mean by that is like an actual step process, where step 1 is this, step 2 is this, and it's more clearly defined. Right now it exists as almost a menu of choices.
Why did that ever go away?
And I could see the counter argument, right? The counter argument is like, well, not all blank behaviors are created equal, because this kid might be dealing with this or this, you know. So they wanted to give schools autonomy in dealing with their own discipline, which I respect the effort, but that has not yielded, once again, that has not yielded the results we want. So why do we continue to do it? You know what I mean? Like I'm more of a data guy on that thing. If we do something for a long time and it doesn't work, why are we continuing to do it that way? So I'm more of a proponent of let's go back to this, and you can make up whatever system you want. But the fact that like this kid knows they're on step 2 and that step 3 equals this is way more easy for a student to get their head around, the family to get their head around, the teacher to know. And then there could be ways to step back down X amount of time without an issue. Steps back down, like whatever. We had this existed. It's not reinventing the wheel here. And we had less discipline problems when that was the case. And so I just think we need to revise or resurrect or bring back some form of an actual step plan when it comes to behavior, when it comes to discipline.
If this is something that all the teachers want to see, then why is it not already
No,
happening?
I can't speak for all teachers,
No,
but I think
saying
most.
if this is something that a group of teachers, you know, even if there's like a handful of them want to see happen, and this is an issue that exists, why are things not moving in a direction to make it happen?
I mean,
There's a lot of boxes that got to be checked for that.
There's a
to
lot
make
of
it all happen.
factors, right? Because obviously it's, well, A, is there enough community support for that kind of thing? And sometimes there won't be because who's like, really, if we're really honest, individually or otherwise, who's like, yes, I would love to be more accountable for my own behavior. like, let's be real honest. Like, that's kind of not America's strength. Like, I'm just going to kind of call America out on that one. We've never really been great about that. Like, even our own independence was founded in this like rebellion, and we're still so excited that we like were rebels, right? And then like we even, you know, did it again 100 years later, fought against ourselves. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's kind of embedded in like our American DNA to be like, no, you're not going to tell us what to do. You know, and it's like, no, sometimes we need to be told what to do because it's the right thing to do. And so like, I just think there's a natural resistance to somebody saying, yeah, but I think when people understand that that's going to protect the majority of students that really do show up trying to be better and trying to learn. And hopefully it'll provide a safety and framework for those troubled students that do have issues with some of those things where they now know the line. Because I can't imagine what it would be like for a 10 or 11-year-old to have no idea whether that particular thing was going to get them suspended or whether that particular thing was not even going to be mentioned, and everywhere in between. And I think that's the system we've created. It's a very inconsistent, you know, system where sometimes this kid gets this, and to me it creates way more problems than it solves. Because then you've got the pockets of like, well, why did that kid get this and this kid got that? And then it starts to introduce little, you know, sparkles and little sprinkles of you know, unfairness and bias. And it's like, no. This was the behavior. This is the consequence. Like, and that's how I try to run my own home. It's how I try to run my classroom. So it's, you know, and I'm not perfect, but at the same time, I think that's an issue we need to tackle as an entire education system.
All right. The one last thing we want to talk about, you were talking about vouchers.
Mm-hmm.
Explain the whole voucher thing to me, and its blessings and its curses.
Sure. So educational choice is an exciting thing. So I don't want to like, you know, dump on educational choice, but I want people to be educated. I think sometimes when people hear the word charter school or they hear the word private school, there's an automatic implication that it's somehow better than public school. And I would just encourage people to do their actual research, because that's not usually even true. Now, there are exceptions that prove the rule, but many private schools do not hire the teachers of the caliber of public schools. Many private schools do not have the educational outcomes that their public school counterparts do. And so I think just people need to make better, like more informed decisions before they make a choice for their own family. So I'm not against school choice, but I think people need to understand that if there's a finite amount of money. So if you're pulling money so that people can go to these private schools, which the original intent was of a private school was to be self-funded and not really rely on the government. So it's kind of weird that we're government funding a private school, yet it's not public. Well, how long will that occur before it becomes a public school? If it's a government funded school, Now you're just giving a very select group of people, like it's a dangerous trend is all I'm saying. You're giving a very select group of people a lot of power on who can come to that school. So say Johnny's a really good basketball player, but he's a behavior problem, but we really want a good basketball team, so he's in. This other kid's great at science. Well, he's in. And so now we're just creating this really weird shift where we're not educating the whole community, the whole child. We're just hand picking and cherry picking. So I would be concerned about that as a trend when we give too much power to like private schools and we fund them with public dollars, because the money does come from those same coffers. And so, just do your research. Some private schools are excellent for what that family wants it for, whether that's religious freedom or whether that's extended programs or location or whatever the situation might be. But at the same time, like, it does not automatically put them a tier above public schools. We have some outstanding public schools here in Brevard County. I mean, with great CTE programs, with amazing like athletic, facilities. We have some awesome culinary stuff. Like, I mean, I could go on, just amazing people teaching amazing kids in wonderful facilities all across, and that's public school. So I think this kind of narrative of like public versus private needs to change. It needs to be like, if you want to make that choice for your family, great. But let's not siphon off all the public dollars to make that choice for you. Because again, that'll only put a very select group of people in power again, which is, I don't know, I'm pretty sure that's what we rebelled against a few hundred years ago. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want that. like we don't want very select groups of people to be in power. We want everybody to have this equal shake and this equal, and to me, there's no greater equalizer than education. So to me, education can get you out of poverty. Education can get you an opportunity. Education can get you a seat at the table. So I just think that that's where my stand. I'm not against private school. I just think people need to, A, educate themselves better about it, and B, let private schools be the private schools they were intended to be, and be self-funded entities that are separate from the public school system.
That's fair.
They'll have more, power and autonomy if they do it that way anyway.
I think that was a great place to leave this conversation. There you
go.
That was flipping awesome, Matt. Thank you for coming over here and joining us and chatting with us.
And just one more parting comment. I want to send a shout out to all my teacher brothers and sisters. Like, keep fighting. You matter to that student. Like, it's one of those where you may not get them all, but you might get that one, and that's all that matters. Like, that day, that lesson, that time you spent with them. You matter. It matters. So keep going.
Yeah, it's a job that shouldn't be a thankless job, but I think a lot of times it is. You know what I mean? It's hard to say that, but I tell Bill thank you all the time for ruining me as a kid. So yeah, I mean it's I don't know. I have so many fond memories of so many great teachers that impacted my life in great ways, and I'll have to digress, but I could go on for days and days. Digressed. All right. Again, thank you for being here and chatting with us, Matt.
Thanks
really appreciate it. Bill, Cindy, thank you guys. Appreciate you all a bunch. I think it was a good couple episodes today.
Yeah.
We were only here for one episode, guys.
That's right. It's all we do.
In real time.
You need to change
episode
shirts if you want to carry on that mirage.
Ooh. Or I'll put episodes in between these two where people at least think I went home.
Have a shirt that says episode 2 and a shirt that says episode 1. That might be funny.
That's a great idea.
Or
I think I might just do that. Yeah. I'm going to have to get a white shirt and do exactly that. People will never have any idea what it means except for the people who have listened to this exact episode.
There you go.
Yep.
All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. You can find the EEARSS podcast on all platforms by searching EEARSS or EEARSS, or go to the website, which is EEARSS.org. January 19th, Cocoa Village, we are having a Ecofest event. You can come there and learn all about different studies and different nonprofits that are working here with wildlife and ecological, environmental, wonderful things on your Space Coast here. So come check it out. Presentations during the day, live music in the afternoon. It's all free. Don't want to miss it. Great time. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will catch you all next week. Bye-bye.